to go pop. A group like 3-6 Mafia just needed to keep doing what we were doing and just put a little twist on it. I don't necessarily blame Columbia for looking at us like that. In their minds, they wanted us to keep getting bigger and bigger. We wanted that too. So Paul and I ended up doing the pop records.
We're checking out Juicy J's Chronicles of the Juice Man. Hit the thumbs up button. Let's go ahead and get into it.
And it just didn't work, man. It was horrible. Dr. Luke said he liked the way I wrote, though. We were in LA, 1,800 miles from Memphis, and there was a new wave of rappers like Gucci Mane that were coming up. The new producers' beats weren't sounding like ours. We were still making dark beats with keyboards, pianos, and strings. They were using different sounds, synthy sounds. I used to hate that shit, but that's when the trapping movement came in like a tidal wave. Gucci Mane, T.I., and Jeezy were killing it. On top of that, we were doing shows here and there and had some opportunities. In 2006, we did a rock song for Jackass #2, Getting Fucked Up. I'd been listening to Billy Idol and Metallica and had so many rock ideas, so I'm glad we had that opportunity. Things were happening, but then the phone stopped ringing. I was also going through a major family conflict. Project Pat had been released from prison July 28, 2005, and was readjusting to society. Upon his release, he was in a different frame of mind and didn't hit the studio right away. When he started recording again, I thought his fire was gone, that he was a little rusty. Everybody in the camp was telling me how good his new material was, so I went to the studio to check it out, to make sure I wasn't missing something. Even though DJ Paul and I had produced everything, I thought it was terrible. If I was a Project Pat fan, there's no way I would listen to this, I told Pat. This is garbage. This ain't it. Pat wasn't hearing it. He also didn't care about the bigger picture of the business either. 3-6 Mafia was riding high thanks to our Oscar, so Columbia Records and parent company Sony wanted us to turn in his album. Pat didn't care. Sony will be fine, he said. But Sony wasn't interested in Project Pat because he had been incarcerated for almost 3 years. I didn't know why Pat was acting like this. He was out of jail, making money, and working on new music. Pat didn't want to do anything to help set up the album either, so its release date kept getting pushed back. Project Pat's ego was so out of control that I had to ease back a bit. When Crook by the Book, the Fed Story LP finally arrived in stores December 5th, 2006, it didn't move major units. Consumed by the album's failure, my arguments with Pat, and my phone not ringing, I was discouraged and worried. I was hoping to retire. I wanted to retire on my own terms, not be forced out of the game. For the first time in my career, I started to wonder if things were over. While I was in LA and driving around, all this weird-ass music was playing on the radio. DJ Paul, Project Pat, and I, along with our homies Computer and Big Treese, were doing our MTV reality show, Adventures in Hollywood, in 2006 and 2007. And I started noticing cocaine packs all around the house we were living in for the show. I even saw some in the backyard, too. I told Pat, "Damn, that cocaine is back." Cocaine is one of the main reasons why 3-6 Mafia isn't together today. The drug usage broke the group up and really fucked up everything. Cocaine is the devil, the Antichrist. It's a different type of monster, I started feeling like Paul and I weren't on the same page. Paul and I had never really had an argument since we started making music together. We'd been on the same page our whole lives. But now, we'd won an Oscar, and we're living in LA. And then we started disagreeing a lot, having small arguments. Shit had changed. Paul was on a rock and roll vibe, which I didn't like. I liked listening to rock music, and I looked at the Jackass song as a one-off. That was just a song, not what I wanted 3-6 Mafia to sound like moving forward. I wanted to do old school 3-6 Mafia music, but I was acting like I was a trap star, which was way off base. I had gone from making music the way I wanted to make it to, oh, this sound is hot. Let me just do it if that's what the people want to hear. Sure, it sounded good, but it wasn't 3-6 Mafia. For the first time in my career, I was trying. I wasn't just doing. Our final 3-6 Mafia album, Last to Walk, arrived in stores June 24, 2008. It was one of our worst releases. We were in LA pretty much full time at that point, but we should have been spending more time in Memphis. To people outside of our circle, the album showed how creative we were. But since we were living in Los Angeles, the album had a Hollywood sound. That was a mistake. In addition to it helping me musically, I would have spent more time with my mom had I been home. When I was in Memphis, she loved going to Red Lobster and Bonefish Grill. We'd hold hands and pray. My mother would tell me that she didn't understand what I was doing in my room when I was growing up, but that she was so happy for me and proud of me. My mom kept my Oscar for me. I didn't want anybody to touch it, knock it over, or break it. So she put it in a box in her closet. Maybe she thought having it in her house was good luck, a symbol of sorts of all that I'd accomplished. One thing I did know, and that we talked about at our dinners, was that we were so thankful that we made it out of the hood. Back in Los Angeles, old problems were resurfacing. Lord Infamous hadn't been in the group for years at this point. Then a club owner I know in LA hit me up. He was telling me about Lord Infamous, that he was asking the owner for pills. I felt nervous that Lord was out in LA looking for drugs. In LA, as long as you have money, the drug man is your friend. You can get whatever you want, and you can get it fast.
Anyway, y'all, this is Juicy J's book, Chronicles of the Juice Man. If y'all want to check out the book, go ahead and check it out on Audible. It's a really good book. It's really easy listening to, read, just learning how these guys came from the notorious streets of Memphis to, winning Oscars and doing TV shows and soundtracks to movies and stuff. It's really inspiring, you know what I'm saying? So if y'all want to check it out, it's on Audible. It's called Juicy J, Chronicles the Juice Man. Yeah, so y'all can check it out on Audible. Hit that thumbs up button, and let me know what y'all think once y'all check it out in the comments. Appreciate it.
Hey, do you want some free money and gift cards? Wow, who doesn't, right? Charles Arn's World will be hiding cash and gift cards around Southern California in the month of June. These gift card money drops will be daily. Want to get your hands on some? Subscribe to the channel to know when's the next money drop.
One, one, two, three, 4. What is up, y'all? It's your boy Charles Under's World, checking in. Listen, we are about to get into the book Diary of a Madman by Scarface. It's a really good audiobook. Y'all can check it out on Audible. We're finna get into this part is the chapter where Scarface pretty much realizes that Rap-A-Lot ain't paying him. Let's go ahead and get into it, guys. The thumbs up button. Let's go ahead and get into the story. I'll come back with my reaction. Appreciate it.
Nothing was ever good enough. No matter how many records I sold, or how much my name started to ring out as one of the best to ever do it, I was never able to meet Jay's expectations for me. There was never any praise or any kind of bonus for outstanding performance, or none of that shit. I couldn't even get a simple good job. Instead, all I ever got was, you ain't working hard enough. Even to this day. I've never gotten a single phone call complimenting me on my records or my performance. Nothing. I'm not saying I needed a trophy or anything, but I was putting in work. The only way I knew if something was good or not was if Big Mello was fucking with it. Big Mello, Curtis, was a seriously funny dude. I'd met him back when we used to catch the 33 Post Oak together on the south side. I was in middle school then, but he was a little older, and I used to work at this little juice spot, making juices and shakes and shit. He was big into music too, and we'd ride the bus rapping and beatboxing to each other. Once I got on, I brought him over to Rap-A-Lot, and over the years we stayed tight. Mello was a Scarface fan. If he told me my shit was jamming, then I knew I had something. And that went for all of the niggas around my way. The minute I got word that Southside was fucking with some shit I'd done, I knew I was good. And it had always been that way with me. From day one, I always wanted to have the most jamming shit in the hood. I couldn't get shit for praise from the record company. But if the niggas in the neighborhood co-signed me, at least I had that. Well, the niggas around the way were definitely fucking with the Untouchable when it came out. It seemed like everybody was. We sent Smile to radio in early '97, just a few months after Pac's death, and the song was so striking, and everyone was still so sad to see Pac go, that it quickly became a hit. It didn't crack the top 10. It topped out at number 12, but it went gold and is still the biggest single I ever released. When the Untouchable arrived in March, the people were ready. With Smile working at radio and my reputation for quality music secure in the streets, the Untouchable debuted at the top of the Billboard 200, pushing U2's Pop down to number 2. I was 26 years old, and I had the number 1 album in the country. I was always much more concerned about the money than the charts, but still, I was all over the radio, and my album was everywhere. It was the one time that I didn't need anyone at the label to call and tell me that shit worked. The success of The Untouchable was undeniable. Almost as soon as The Untouchable dropped, we started plotting my next album. It was the first time we planned a release ahead of time, and even though I usually didn't work like that, this was one plan I could get behind. From day one, the plan was to get me paid. Rap-A-Lot had just negotiated a new deal with Virgin, shifting distribution from Virgin subsidiary New Tribe Records to Virgin proper. And the talk around the label was that the new deal meant more exposure and more bread. The biggest check I'd ever seen from Rap-A-Lot was a $400,000 royalty check after the Diary went platinum. And I'd had to pay that shit back for management or publishing or some shit that the label controlled. I'm not even sure what. So you know I was ready to cash in. From the beginning, I wanted to do exactly what Dr. Dre had done with The Chronic. Produce a bunch of incredible beats, pair them with a bunch of dope-ass MCs, maybe add a verse here or there, and really showcase what I can do behind the boards. It was the ideal situation for me. I was already making a ton of beats, and the MCs weren't a problem. The label was stacked, and with a lot of talent, like AG, 2A Key, and the whole Face Mob that I brought through the door.
And I knew guys like Ice Cube and Too Short would be down when they got the call. Well shit, I was jamming so hard and the records were coming together so quickly that we decided to make that motherfucker a double album. Pac and Biggie had both won with double albums and we figured shit, I could carry one too. The album took less than a year to put together and everyone was excited about it, me most of all. I called it My Homies. Unfortunately, when it came time to release the album, shit didn't go quite as planned. Not even close. First off, I wasn't feeling the single. Now, the way shit would go at Rap-A-Lot when you turned the records in, your workday was done, and you could never be 100% sure that the album that you turned in would be the album that would appear in stores. Sometimes you turn shit in one way, and then go to buy the album, and there'd be shit on there that you'd never heard. A new singer on one record, or a new verse by someone else on another, you name it. There was always some shit going on or being added in at the last minute. You'd hear that shit, and it'd be like somebody went in your sock drawer and put their feet in your socks, or their ass in your underwear or some shit. It was disgusting. But the label was in control. And if you got pissed off and tried to address it, you might not be able to get a check, or Jay would stop answering the phone, and next thing you know, 5 or 10 years would go by and you'd be like, damn, I never got paid for that shit at all. And that's pretty much what happened with the lead single from My Homies, Homies and Thugs. First and foremost, it was Jay's idea to get Master P and me together on a record. Now, nothing personal against P, but I didn't want him on the album. I didn't give a fuck that P was on fire. It just felt like jumping on what was hot to sell a record. And I've never been into that whole let me find out who's hot and get them on my album or jump on one of their songs approach. I'm not breaking my neck to get in the studio with someone just so I can ride his wave. That shit has always been corny to me. So when P came through, it was all love because P's my dog. But it wasn't a big deal to me that we get a song done together. Sure, he was hot, and he had sold all of these millions of records, but I'm Face. He was doing him, and I was doing me. And I didn't feel like I needed his help to sell my project. Shit, I'd made it this far. I'd be good on my own. Then Jay wanted to put that Pac verse on there too. And that shit was just a complete failure to me. It wasn't like we had some crispy, never-before-heard verse from Pac that was cut in the booth and mixed and mastered and all of that shit. Nah. We had some video footage of Pac freestyling that my cousin had shot while we were all hanging out, bullshitting and drinking in the studio during the Smile session. We had to hunt my cousin down to get that footage. It was that bad. And I was just watching all of this happen like, fuck, man. This is some bottom-of-the-barrel shit if I've ever seen it. Taking a dead man's vocals off of a videotape to use it in a song? That's the lowest of the low. I know Pac probably flipped over in his grave when he heard that shit. I thought the record was a fuck-up from jump. If it had been up to me, I would have left Homies and Thugs off the album. But it wasn't my call. And I could say, I don't want to do this, or don't put that song on my album all I wanted. But when it came down to it, Jay was going to do what Jay was going to do. And there wasn't shit to do but accept it. But that was Jay just being way ahead of me again. He knew that P was that hot, and that the fans didn't care about the quality of the Pac verse. They just wanted more Pac. The song wasn't a runaway hit, but it did pretty well at radio, and let everyone know that there was a new Scarface album on the shelf. Still, I thought that whole shit was disastrous. I wasn't trying to sell my shit like that. Not with Master P and a piss-poor recording of a Pac verse. I wasn't looking for that kind of help, and I definitely didn't think that song was a highlight of the album. If I had been picking singles, I would have gone with the UGK and 3-2 record, Too Real, or The Ghetto, with me, Willie D, and Ice Cube. Those were the standout records to me. Putting out Homies and Thugs felt like tying a 45-pound weight to my reputation and throwing it in the river just to see if it would sink. Those kinds of moves can destroy a career. Luckily, I was able to float on past it. My Homies came out in March 1998, and hit #4 on the Billboard chart. It was platinum within a month of release. The way I was looking at it, I'm thinking $8 a record for 1 million records sold was going to be mine. My big payday was finally here, right? 8 times 1 million is easy math. Wrong. The crop didn't come in that year, boss. The crop never came in. I didn't see shit approaching $8 million off of that album. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, when it was all said and done, I think I got one $120,000 check. And that check went right back to management before the ink ever had a chance to dry. That's what finally pushed me to the point of feeling like, fuck this. For years, I'd gone back to back to back, busting my ass to make quality music and put out quality albums. But after a decade with the label, I'd sold over 4 million albums on my own, plus another 2+ million with the Ghetto Boys, and I still didn't really have shit to show for it. No matter how many gold or platinum albums I put out, the label wasn't breaking any bread with me. And this was from day one.
Oh man, so damn, it took 10 years for Scarface to make real money, even though he was with Rap-A-Lot, one of the biggest conglomerates in the world. But as far as like record labels in the South, it was the big, especially at that time. Damn, it took him 10 years to get paid. Wow, man. I wonder why. So I guess Little J Prince, we call him Little J. I guess he ran a tight ship at Rap-A-Lot. He didn't want to give up that paper. You know what I'm saying? But dang, 10 years, and he had all those hits with Tupac and Ice Cube and Diary of a Madman, and he wasn't getting paid. He said he only seen like $100 and some thousand from that album, that last album he did with Smile on it, which was a huge hit, especially after Tupac passed away is when that album came out. And that song was every freaking where, man. Like even in Florida, like they was playing that song every hour on the hour. But man, that rap game, man, the record label, the record company, the record times, hip hop times, all that stuff, man, back in those days was shady. Anyway, what do y'all think about that, man? That video? Leave your comments, subscribe to Charles and Israel. That thumbs up button. Appreciate it.
What's up, y'all? We are checking out Rick Ross's memoir, Hurricanes. That's the name of Rick Ross's new book. It's been out for a while now, but it's actually pretty good, man. Y'all should check it out. It's on Audible. Let's go and get into chapter 12, and I'm going to come back with my reaction. Hit that thumbs up button.
Chapter 12. I have the gift of foresight. I can see the different ways that a situation might play out. Every possible outcome, but not every time. There are some storms you never see coming. There would be no sophomore slump. Triller was another #1, selling just shy of 200,000 copies in its first week. The Boss, my single with T-Pain, landed in the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100, becoming my second certified platinum record after Hustlin'. Things were going pretty good. The label was happy, the fans were happy, the money was piling up. I was dating Foxy Brown, and that relationship was exciting. I'd had a thing for Foxy since I first heard her on a song called Touch Me, Tease Me back in '96. I met her on the set of DJ Khaled's video for Out Here Grindin' that summer, and we hit it off. Aside from a minor legal issue, I didn't have much to complain about. At the top of 2008, I'd gotten arrested in North Miami after a traffic stop. I'd been charged with carrying a concealed weapon and possession of marijuana. The arrest was nothing to be too worried about. The weed charge had already gotten dropped, and soon the gun one would be too. I had a license to carry, but due to an error, my permit had registered as suspended. The case was going to get dismissed. The only part that was concerning was when my lawyer found out my case had been assigned to the police department's gang task force.
During a deposition of the arresting officer, he was told it was because of my alleged ties to a gang called the Carroll City Cartel. Why was this case assigned to the gang task force? Because your client claims affiliation with the Carroll City Cartel and other known gang members. Where did you get that from? Other detectives. Is that pulled out of the vast universe, or do you have something definitive? I think there is some literature or video on YouTube that you can pull up for yourself. I had to move with a little more caution. I'd worn a Boobie Boys t-shirt in the Hustlin' video. Then I put out a documentary called M.I.A.Y.O., counting down the top 10 dope boys in Miami history. I was essentially taunting law enforcement. I was still too connected to the streets to be acting so reckless. So I was being mindful of my moves around this time. I was aware that something from my past could get dug up and used against me. It just never occurred to me that it could be the thing it ended up being. Halfway through the summer, I got a call from one of my homies telling me there was something I needed to see. A website had published a photograph of me at a graduation ceremony for the Florida Department of Corrections. I was dressed in a correctional officer uniform and shaking hands with a middle-aged white lady by the name of Marta Villacorta. Marta was the warden for the South Florida Reception Center, a state prison in Doral. The article said the picture confirmed rumors that I had once worked as a correctional officer. The subtext was this made me a fraud, that all my talk about moving kilos in my raps were lies if this were true. Immediately, the story started to spread like wildfire. Report: Rick Ross worked as a Florida corrections officer. Rolling Stone. Rick Ross, correction officer rumored confirmed. XXL. Rick Ross's coke rap career imperiled by charges of law enforcement. Vulture. I'm talking about this here, as opposed to earlier in the book when it took place, because this is when my time as a correctional officer became an important part of my story. Prior to this moment, I thought of it no differently than when I used to wash cars, or when my mama got me a job for the Department of Health delivering medicine to people who were too sick to leave their house. When I dropped out of Albany State and moved home, I needed to get a job. I was getting money, so it wasn't that I needed the income so much as that I needed something to tell my mama I was doing with my life. If I wasn't in college, then I had to get a job. Those were the rules if I wanted to live in her house. The job I really wanted was to work at the docks. I wanted to be a longshoreman. I used to bug Gino, my tattoo artist and a good friend, to connect me with his younger brother Kano. Kano was part of a crew of Haitians called the ROC, which stood for Rich Off Cocaine. They were known for pulling huge heists at the port of Miami. They'd get tipped off about incoming cargo ships that were smuggling in some kilos, and from there, it could go one of two ways. Either Kano and his crew would hijack the freighters at sea, where they'd strip everybody naked, toss their phones into the ocean, and get somebody to give up the goods, or they would wait until the loads came off the docks. Then, disguised as undercover police officers, Kano and his crew would pull the smugglers over and rob them. They'd be in unmarked Crown Victorias, outfitted with strobe lights and everything. This was high-level piracy. I wanted to be the inside man at the docks, but you needed a plug at the union to get that job. I would drop hints to Gino to get him to introduce me to Kano. In addition to tattoos, Gino did custom airbrushing, and one afternoon, I brought in a pair of Timberlands and $200 and told him I wanted him to write Rich Off Cocaine on them. The boots came out incredible, but Gino didn't take the bribe as far as connecting me with Kano. He didn't want to see either of us get into any more trouble than we were already getting into. That's when I applied for a job at the Florida Department of Corrections. I already knew several niggas who worked as correctional officers. It was a common job for big, mean former football players. It was also an easy job to get because Florida has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. Being a CO is not a job that someone with lifelong aspirations to work in law enforcement takes. My first 6 months was spent in the Department of Corrections Basic Recruit Training Program. The 540-hour course consisted of me taking multiple choice tests, completing obstacle courses, and learning first aid and CPR. The main campus of the South Florida Reception Center is a violent place, but they don't throw you to the wolves right away. As a level 1 correctional officer, I was assigned to a watchtower post in the prison's South Unit. The South Unit housed 600 inmates, most of whom were either elderly or ill.
After a few months in the tower, I was promoted, which meant I got to escort these guys to the medical ward and stand by while they recovered from various surgeries and procedures. As you can imagine, these inmates didn't tend to cause many problems. The play was to get transferred over to the main unit. Once I got over there, this correctional officer shit was gonna be a lick. The pay was still shit. My starting salary was less than $25,000. But this was where you could make money off the books by bringing in weed or letting niggas finger their girls during visitation. The main unit is where I would encounter niggas I knew, or niggas that Mike and Booby knew. Both of them had a lot of connections and influence in the correctional system. Really, they had connections everywhere. The fire department, the phone company, the police. For a while, I made an effort to perform the job to the best of my ability. I showed up on time. I logged my hours. I wrote up the reports. But that didn't last too long. The thing people don't understand about prison, whether you're in there as an inmate or a CO, is how uneventful it is most of the time. I'd never been so bored in my life. I started smoking weed before I went in. Then I'd just sit there, waiting for the days to be over. I'd look out past the barbed wire fence and imagine a different life waiting for me on the other side. Something better than this. Something special. I never made it to the main unit. I think word may have gotten around to some of the higher-ups that I knew people over there. My supervisors weren't interested in transferring me over to the main campus, and once I realized that wasn't happening, I came to the conclusion that the job had run its course. So I quit. That was pretty much it.
Okay, so Rick Ross has always kind of dodged this question. I think he might have explained it maybe one or two times, but he explained it now. So I guess he's trying to say that he needed a job because he was young, he was staying with his mama. So he just got it as like a quick little job. He wasn't really taking it seriously, but he really wanted to go over to the main area and start like making money because he knew all the dope boys were in the main area. So I guess he was gonna start like making money off, dudes letting them bring their girls in, taking them somewhere back, because that is a lucrative business out there. And I've heard this from other correction officers that they let the inmates give them money to be able to get, stuff in there, illegal stuff in there, be able to do, hey, I got a little spot. Can you find me a little spot? Cause my wife coming or my girlfriend coming, so we can spend about 30 minutes and we can go unnoticed, so I can bang her out real quick. So he's trying to make it seem like he wasn't really a correction officer that was doing his job. He was just there as a means to use it as a lick to get on. You know what I'm saying? That's what he...
Looking for a professional photographer for your next big event? Need video of your special day? Then look no further. For $100 an hour, have a professional photographer or videographer shoot your wedding, birthday party, quinceañera, bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, anniversary party, or whatever your special occasion may be. Highlight your event with professional, crisp photos and video. Check out Charles Arness Photography on Instagram, as well as book us for your next event. Must live in the Southern California area.